Good morning, everybody. My name is Peter McAteer. I'm the CEO of Sysmax, and I'll be walking through a presentation with you, and then we're going to go into a demonstration of the software system that we are offering to the sector at the moment. What we're going to talk about is the state of readiness within the sector that we're seeing at the moment for compliance with competency requirements under the Building Safety Act, and in particular the golden thread, which requires that proof of compliance and competency throughout not only the organization but its supply chain as well. So we're going to walk through 3 disasters and one key regulatory theme across all of them, against a backdrop of a sector under great scrutiny. We'll then walk you through the architecture of the Benchmarks platform, and then talk briefly about the summary of the experience of the pilot projects that we ran over the last year, and then what the opportunities are that we have for upskilling, retention, career development, efficiency, and cost reduction, and also looking at your participation in this and where we might go with it in future. 3 disasters with one theme, and I hope none of you have been involved in a disaster, far less, if any, 2, and hopefully definitely never in your lifetimes 3, but I have. So I was offshore the night of the Piper Alpha disaster, and it is the 35th anniversary of that disaster today. And every time I talk about it, the hairs on my arms stand up, and they are doing very much so at the moment. 167 people lost their lives that night, and I knew a couple of them, I'd worked with them, but it was transformational for the UK oil and gas sector. We became the first nation in the world to require proof of compliance and competency with best practice as a regulatory requirement as a result of the 1996 Cullen Inquiry, which looks remarkably like Dame Hackett's report post-Grenfell. Fast forward to 2010, I was involved in the Deepwater Horizon disaster as an expert advisor to investors, looking at the probability of BP and its 2 main suppliers being found grossly negligent. And had that happened, it would have taken down 20% of UK and North American pensions. It was so grave. But it was the largest oil spill in history and almost the largest corporate collapse in history. Then I got involved in the Grenfell disaster, and I felt guilty when that happened because I could see it was going to happen. I'd bought in my lifetime several new properties because moving around the country, I thought the easiest and best thing to do is buy a new property. How foolish I was. 2 of them were highly explosive. I saw no semblance of compliance or competency from the glint in the architect's eyes through to hand over to me as a property owner. And they both could have killed myself and my family. Our track record is substantial in this subject. We've been at it since 1996, looking at compliance with best practice and the competency of people within organizations. So worldwide with Shell, BG, PepsiCo, BP. And last year we moved into the social housing sector with places for people, Citizen, Berners Live, Bernassia, Carbon, Mears. And the feedback on that's been very good, actually. The Building Safety Act, the clock is ticking, but our feedback from most organizations that we talk to is they don't know what to do. They really feel like a rabbit caught in headlights, and it is difficult. We have a largely mobile workforce working remote from us. In some instances, not the best educated people that we might wish for, and they're dealing with live situations that are challenging in themselves, and they're continuously changing. So it is a real challenge. I wouldn't take that away from the sector. It is not easy. But the full implementation is due by October this year, and there will be audits. There will be a need to demonstrate organizational compliance and competency. And bear in mind, we're talking organization as well as the individual. A requirement to produce a building safety case and report. Safety case actually is from the Cullen Inquiry, that terminology, the oil and gas experience. And that proof of competency and compliance of personnel and product through the supply chain to delivery and the maintenance thereof. There will be cases of corporate manslaughter, there will be fines, there will be reputational damage, shareholder ruin for those who failed to underestimate its severity. And we've seen this happen in the oil and gas industry. We've seen operations shut down, including the Brent field. You've heard about Brent crude. The oil price is quoted on the price of that product. That field was shut down due to lack of proof of competency. And it's not the only one. We've had rigs unable to move to a location to do their job because there was no proof of competency, and that was shut down by the health and safety executive. We've been audited. The last I counted was 13 times by the health and safety executive, and always came out smelling of roses for our clients. And the experience is sometimes very, very challenging. The golden thread is, I think, a breakthrough for all industry, never mind social housing. It requires higher standards of all of us, but it's a tremendous opportunity. The Get It Right initiative puts inefficiency in the construction sector at 21%, and approximately £21 billion a year is wasted because 1 in 5 projects have to be redone. And I spoke earlier about a property that I had that was highly explosive. It was me that discovered what the problem was. It was me that discovered the failure to abide by building regulations. Every single house in that development had its gas infrastructure condemned and replaced with electrical equipment as a result of that. The cost was phenomenal. So what we need within the golden thread is accurate and trusted evidence, so that proof that we have the truth, that will give us the security for our residents that we require. The biggest challenge actually is probably that cultural change, that increased competence, the capability, the working practices, the processes, information management and control. But it is also an enabler for better collaborative working. And I would quote, for instance, Black Damp. We can take a best practice from a single social housing company, break it down into compliance checks, which we share across the entirety of social housing. The efficiencies can be tremendous. And that's what we mean by collaborative working. What we're looking for is a single source of the truth under a secure environment. We are an ISO 27001 company. Multiple audits, not had any non-compliances of late. It's a simple to access system, and we're looking at the longevity and shareability of information across the sector, all the way through from the glint in the architect's eyes through to eventually the abandonment of the building. And it also has to be relevant and proportionate, and that is quite a skill actually, to make things simple enough to deal with the workforce that we're dealing with. We are offering within this webinar pain-free compliance. So we've done a lot of work. We've got a bunch of profiles already built into the system: roofers, electricians, gas engineers, joiners, plumbers, bricklayers, asbestos, working at heights, lone worker, a bunch of compliance checks across the spectrum of the organizations. And we're offering those as a starter pack to get everybody moving, because we're seeing a great deal of lethargy within social housing. I think that's really down to people not knowing what to do. And these audits are coming around the corner. So we're offering 10 hours of system onboarding, training and support, and no system charges until the 1st of October. So it is a pain-free way of having a defense for the health and safety executive knocking on your door. And you can have that at the end of this webinar. We'll have you up and running within a few days. So what is the system? It's a digital tool that ensures the company and its people are compliant, efficient, and safe. It's a digital tool that takes the company's knowledge and distributes it by role. So it allows the operatives to have an ability to demonstrate their competency, an ability to grow, multi-skill, develop, and become the future better selves that they want to be, It allows supervisors to assess and sign off at the point of execution, so we don't have to bring a third party in, we don't have to have auditors crawling all over us. We entrust our own organizations to do what they've always been doing, but now we have the facility to prove and to enable improvement of the skills of the people. It provides quick and easy access to key documents. We have a library available on the device pertinent to the individual and the role that they're doing, even down to the minutiae of the equipment that they're about to work on. This is what you do with this particular boiler. This is what you do with this particular fire door. It helps drive and improve skills and enables you to prove the competency to the health and safety executive and the building safety regulator. It is available on any device, online and offline, and which is fantastic when we're dealing with large buildings or poor Wi-Fi spots or lack of access to 4G. And it does contain the best practices, the company procedures, how to do things, standard operating procedures, safe working practices. And it also has this very wonderful power of video. So we can go into the workplace, take a video of a situation, and through the app, seek wisdom from people that can support us. So I've got this problem. Anybody know how to fix this problem? And have an expert group sitting somewhere else. They can say, don't do it that way, do it this way. Send the video and fix the problem. So efficiencies coming out of that as well. And we can use that medium, whether it's video, PowerPoint, or any other kind of file, to provide in-the-moment training materials that are always available. And there is a thing called the forgetting curve, which is stunning. So we have this assumption that we train people and they will forever know what we've trained them. That is utter nonsense. It's been proven that within a few hours of being trained in subject matter, 10 to 15% is gone already. Within a few days, it can be as much as 70 or 80% of what you've trained them has been forgotten. So we can constantly remind people. There are benefits for the entire team. For the workers, they have that efficient, smooth working on the job. They've got a playbook in their pocket. They have the ability to upskill and grow. They have proof of competency, and they're also assuring themselves and their team of safety. From a supervisor's point of view, make sure we have the right person doing things right, which is a potentially massive breakthrough for us. We have the ability to assure performance with efficiency and have the oversight within the workplace and real-time monitoring. We also have, from a senior management point of view, the ability to meet stakeholders' expectations, to improve our health and safety and environmental performance through compliance and competency, with a flexible, efficient workforce. We can go from a detailed insight of an individual all the way through to the nation through the reporting. Murray, I'm going to hand over to you and ask you to walk through the system, if you would, please.
I can pick up from there. If you... Okay. So good morning, everyone. I'm Murray Cormack. I'm the CTO of Sysmax. I'm going to complete this slide deck and then we will jump into the demo. So, Peter's talked about our platform, our software platform, and we just want to talk about how that actually works. So, as with most companies, the problem isn't that you don't have the information. The problem usually is that you've got this information, but it's held in disparate locations on different laptops, different servers, in people's heads, in Excel, on paper. So what we look to do is to take those existing artifacts, kind of put them into a sorting order by framework if needed, and then we take them into our platform. And once they're in our platform, we typically categorize those as one of three things: compliance checks, procedures, and courses. And by doing this, this gives us the building blocks to drive compliance, competency assurance, and performance improvement across the organization. Now, I'll quickly highlight what typically each of these items may represent, but they're typically things that you would need your workforce to have done. Now, there's no hard and fast set rule here, but typically a course is something that we would not look to replicate online. It might be Cities and Guild, it could be a firefighting course, whatever. But in terms of the system, we just need to have a representation of it so that we know that our workforce have done that. whether that's a one-off or on a reoccurring basis every year, for example. Procedures. Now, these are things I'm sure most of you will have lots of already. Safe working procedures, best practice, etc. And by taking that into our system, straight away, you've got the winning benefit that people have got access to that any point, anytime at the point of execution. Our belief is that these procedures should not just be leveraged when you're doing verification that people understand things. If I haven't learned how to, or if I learned how to do a particular task 6 months ago, for sure I'm not going to remember when I go to do it later. So by having it available at the point of delivery on any device, anytime, you've got it as an aide-memoire, and it's going to help drive best practice. And lastly, compliance checks or compliance templates. Now, we will cover this exactly in the demo, but what these really are is that they're a mechanism that allows you to really ensure that, the success of training. Do people really understand what they need to be doing? Can they demonstrably show it? And it's really a procedure that's been broken down into measurable chunks. Again, we'll make this come to life in the demo. So once we've got these items in place, the next kind of step in the process is that we create what we call curricula or playbooks. Now, these are just logical groupings of relevant or related information. This can be whatever you need, but we've given some examples here: a safety curriculum, social housing playbook. It can be whatever. And the final point is that we then...
Murray, are you able to see the screen? I was waiting for you to tell me to change slides there.
I am sharing the screen. Can you not see that?
Yeah, it's showing fine.
Yeah, okay. So
okay.
So in terms of that, we can then, the next step is that we can create roles. Now, a role can be anything. It can be joiner, cleaner, plumber, cleaner, whatever you want. And the key point is that we would then associate curricula to these roles. Now, the beauty here is that in terms of the administrative overhead, is that the system will really take care of a lot of that burden. So in this example here, you can see we have a junior engineer role, which for anyone doing that role, they have to demonstrate competency or compliance of the safety curriculum, everything within it, and the social housing playbook. We also have a site supervisor. Now, you note that they too also have the safety curriculum. Now, if you or someone in your organization is in charge of defining what's in that safety curriculum, they don't need to know who has to prove competency there. Their sole responsibility is to add something to it. And then as soon as they do that, the system will automatically assign that requirement to every single person who's a junior engineer, wherever they are in the country, and to every single site supervisor. So the admin overhead is totally taken away, and you can guarantee safe in the knowledge that the appropriate people who have to do this will be notified of that, and not only the individuals themselves, but the appropriate assessors. So for example, if there's 5 people out of a large organization who are working at height assessors, they will be notified of the people that they have to assess during that process. And lastly, we would then assign a role to an individual. So in this case here, we've got Steve Arnott. His primary role may be a junior engineer. That could be a plumber, electrician, whatever. But what the system will say is that Steve knows what he has to demonstrate his compliance and capability of. His line managers will know, his assessors, his superiors will know. But let's say 3 months down the line, we're looking for volunteers to be fire warden, and Steve volunteers to do that. Now, all we would simply do within our software is additionally add the fire warden role to Steve. Now, what's great about this is that as soon as Steve is given that role, he is 20% compliant already. Why is that? It's because in his default role as a junior engineer, he has done working with chemicals, and we can see that's been replicated over here. So the system understands and recognizes any crossover in items that they are already competent in already. Now, where this can also be very useful is that if I am looking for good candidate fire wardens, in one of our reports, we can break down what is needed of a fire warden and what they need to have done, and the system will identify people who have already done this by osmosis. So it can help you upskill and move across the workforce and enable new people to do new roles quickly and simply. We'll now jump into the demo. Please feel free to ask any questions in the chat, and we can pick them up at any time. Can I just confirm that people can see my screen, which should be a web browser at the moment?
Yes.
Yes, I can see it.
Correct. Okay, so the product we're going to show you here is Benchmax. Now, as Peter mentioned, it's a software platform, and it is what we call software as a service. There's no real setup or configuration needed. It's available straight away through the web. But in addition to that, we do have the system available on apps that can be used on phones and tablets. The reason for that is that the majority of our user base are not near a PC. They're on oil rigs, they're on construction sites, they're in factories, they're mining. So for them to be able to do their job, be able to assess people, be able to have best practice, we need to be able to make that very easy for them. And that's the job of the app, which we'll show you as well. And in addition to that, the app also facilitates offline working so that you can continue to work seamlessly. You can assess people all while offline. And as soon as you are back online, the system will sync. So without further ado, I'm going to log in to the web. Now, what we will say is that the features and functionality are all permission driven. So for this user that I'm logged in right now, I can't see a lot of the features. But one thing that is common to everybody is this notion of the library that Peter touched upon. Now, with this, it gives you access to everything in the organization at any point. That includes, the entire document set for your organization, but also it can be curated by role. If I'm an electrician, there's a filter on here that shows me only things that pertain to an electrician. Now, in this example, I just want to highlight, and this is going to drive towards why we really push and advocate the use of converting procedures, the relevant ones, into compliance checks. So if I bring up this safe use of ladders procedure, this is probably a good example of what happens in the real world at the moment. You may be asked as a worker to read this and verify that you understand it. Or if you're the supervisor, you would typically bring this up on an iPad, ask your team to read it, and then when you come back, you would sign off, and that might be valid for a year. Now, if you were a worker, or even if you had the responsibility of people's lives in your hands, would you really feel confident that just having read this small document here, that you are safe or confident, or that your workforce are capable of climbing up a ladder safely? We would say no. And that is why we have this notion of compliance templates. Now, let me show you the same procedure, but represented as a compliance check here. So in this instance, we have a lady called Jane Cobb that we are going to verify her capability to climb a ladder safely. Now, what we've done is we've broken that procedure down into categories, and within those categories, we have got particular requirements that the individual has to understand and demonstrate capability of. Now, straight away, I can start to see that by doing this, I can see where Jane is strong. She understands leg stability based on the requirements, but there's an issue around climbing and using ladders. I'm only deeming her as 20% capable. Now, before we drill into how we come to that score, I just want to highlight that there's 3 ways in which a compliance check can be used. And it's up to you. It depends on the notion, the severity or the criticality of the compliance check. So the first way is that you can empower your workforce to do self-assessment. There's a set of requirements that you can ask them to gather evidence if they so wish, or just confirm that they understand it. The second way is that you can have just the assessors assessing people, more of a traditional way. But the third way, and that's what we're seeing here, is that you can have what we call a double-sided compliance check. And in this, we would get both the person being assessed and the assessor to give their points of view. Now, in this situation, only the assessor can see how the operator has scored, or the worker, but the worker cannot see how they have been assessed. Now, this brings up some really interesting insights. So obviously, you would be hoping for alignment between how someone's self-awareness of how good they are at doing something, and it should be aligned with the assessor. As we can see here in section 1, there's alignment. But what we've seen with a lot of other customers, that throws up some interesting scenarios. So, for example, a common one we've seen is people who will self-assess. I've been doing this job for 30 years. I understand everything, and they give themselves a high score. However, when they're assessed, they're actually cutting corners, they're skipping key processes, and they're an accident waiting to happen. Conversely, you get people who may not be very confident. They don't think they're doing the job very well. However, when they're assessed, they're doing a really good job. And it's these kind of people that you can unearth that are actually good contenders to move into a more senior role or to give more responsibility to. So going back to how we kind of drive and find out how compliant are using our tool. Now, again, doesn't matter if I'm on the web interface or a tablet or an app, it's all the same system we're integrating and interfacing into. So you can use whatever touch point you want. But if I drill into section 5 here, there's 4 requirements, and I can jump into this. Now, here's an example requirement. The requirement is make sure that only one worker is ever on the steps and ladder at one time. Now, with each requirement, if you so wish, you can add any guidelines, aid memoirs, reference points that will enable an assessor or a worker to see what they should or should not be doing. So obviously, in this case, here's an example of what should not be going on. You should not be having 2 people on one ladder at any one time. Now, as an assessor, if I was on a device, I could see that, look, I can see that I went along to assess Jane and I can see she's sharing a ladder with someone. I can take a picture or a video of that if that's within the culture of your organization. If not, you can, additionally just put notes of what you observed, and you can then decide on how you respond to that. Now, in this example, we've made it very yes or no, but if you so wish, you can have different levels of conformance. You could give partial conformance or needs further training, and dependent on that score for that response, that will impact the score for that section, and not only the section, but the compliance check in total for that individual. But that then additionally will set the score for your site, for that role, for your organization. So every little bit of detail from the ground up is affecting the score for different levels at an aggregate level. Now, just to show you a quick use as well of video, we've got another requirement here around about making sure that ladders are safe and clean from debris. Again, a representation of what you're not looking for. But if you so wish, you can have a video which will show what is good practice. Now, if you use your imagination, imagine there's a very complex task. You could have a little video snippet, something very consumable that will guide both the assessors or workers showing what you're looking for, and that's available at any time in your device. Again, just to show how evidence can be captured, I turned up on site and this is what I found. Now, ideally, you'd maybe want to have a video of good practice being followed so that when the HSC come in, you can say, look, we've assessed this person. We've seen that they're doing a good job. We can see that they're following best practice guidelines. Here you go. And what this does is that by gathering all this evidence, there's no more scrambling around when the HSE coming in, trying to gather evidence. Not only are you getting that granular level of detail, but you've got scoring, people's training matrices, training records are fully up to date the second that you do this. Another key use of this is that it also allows and facilitates the ability to have remote assessing. So in the cases where your assessors cannot be everywhere, you can get your workforce to gather evidence of themselves doing something, and the assessors can log in anytime they like to show that. Now, obviously, what we've shown you here is just on an individual level, so you can see the differences between looking at how Jane understands working on a ladder versus the old way. Jane, do you understand this? Oh, yes, I do. I'll sign off here. We would never get that granular detail that Jane needs to be developed in a certain area. But if we look at it not just on an individual level, let's take it to an aggregate level. And we've got many reports, we won't go into them all just now, but if I just to quickly highlight, we can gather data on different sites, and each site is graded on a 1 to 5 level based on the average compliance. Grade 5 would be anything with an average score over 80%. Grade 2 would be, as we can see here for a lot of the sites, between 20 and 39%. But if we drill into one of these sites quickly, I'm going to go into here, department within a site. And for each of those levels, we're getting that granular detail. And I can see it that on this site, we have 2 roles in play. We've got electrical engineers. There's 12 of them. None of them are fully trained. And we've also got senior electrical engineers, and we've got 3 of these. But you can imagine you could have as many roles as you want. You're getting a breakdown on which roles are compliant, which roles are not. But to get more detail, I'm going to click on the electrical engineer role. Now, within that, I can see everybody who is an electrical engineer, and I can see their top line score. And below that, if you recall, in the slide deck where we talked about how we break these roles into curricula, I can also get scoring at a curricula level, and I can see who has done what. I can see that, for example, Bob Worker here, he has not yet been signed off as an electrical compliance. He hasn't done working in a kitchen. I've got that level of detail here. But what I want to focus on at the moment is that within this electrical compliance curricula for this electrical worker role, there is a compliance check called electrical compliance. Now I'm going to click on that. And this is going to give me a breakdown of how everybody in my team is doing for this compliance check. Now, if you recall, we broke down the safe use of ladders into different sections. And if we start looking at a top level score, again, we're using that color coded heat map, and where anything in dark green is over 80% compliant. Everybody looks to be fairly safe. They look to be compliant, apart from maybe Susan here, who's kind of sitting at a grade 4. So that looks fine. However, the details and the devil's in the detail, I guess, or whatever the phrase is. But if we start to scroll down, everything looks green until suddenly, when I get to section 6, I'm seeing horizontally lots of reds and yellows. What does this tell me? It tells me that for the most part, everybody understands electrical compliance, but there's one very discrete area where there's a common issue amongst my team that no one understands that. No one is understanding hazardous area electrical equipment. If I was a betting person and I was trying to highlight where our next serious incident is going to be, I would say it's going to be around here. So why is that? Are we not doing a good job at training people here? Is it something that's complex? Whatever the reason, it's something that I would never have the insight into before if I was simply getting sign-offs that people have done a course or if people understand the procedure. So it's really, as Peter will mention, I'm sure, or advocate, that a lot of these serious incidents that happen is down to small detail where people are just not following it. So if I want to get even further detail on why people are not understanding it, I can take an individual, and we've got this guy Adrich, and if I go into one of his sections 6.2, I can look at the precise requirements, which was, is Adrich be able to perform maintenance on hazardous area electrical equipment? He was given a non-conformance, and there's some notes in here that say Adrian has not fully completed his training and should not be assigned to any hazardous area electrical equipment. So the reason that they're failing is because they haven't done training. Now, if you think about this, we went from looking at your organization at country level, down to a site, down to a department, down to a role, down to an individual, down to a precise requirement that an individual has to be compliant with in about 6 mouse clicks. It's a micromanager's dream. So you can get as much detail, or the relevant people in your workforce can get as much detail as they need to, or at a higher level, if you're management, senior management, you're just wanting to be concerned about, at a certain location, how does that stack up against another location? What's the average compliance, etc., etc. Now, if we jump back into kind of social housing, this is just example data. I'm just going to give you a quick overview here of some of the roles that we have within the system. Now, we do have some roles already in place, but you can absolutely add your own roles and whatever you want. So, for example, here we've got some roles, a bricklayer role, which we can see these are the curriculum that bricklayer has to do. We have fire safety workers, we have joiners, we have plumbers. And just to explode that a little bit, we can look at the curriculums. Here's an asbestos curriculum. Here's the items that someone that has that curriculum has to demonstrate competence and compliance on. Construction workers, slip, trips and falls, manual handling, the sort of things you'd expect. And if we just go into our library, give you 2 examples of some procedures. So we've got a fire safety procedure here. Let's have a quick look at that. This is being highlighted as a PDF. Now you can have this on your phone, your tablet, whatever. And if we give you an example of a compliance check, let's have a look. We can have, let's see, what everyone's favorite, working at height. And we can just show you some of these here. You can get some guideline information here. Actually, let's look at manual handling. I think that's got a little bit better data. Where are we? Just return to the library. Here we go, manual handling. So we've got a section here, avoid hazardous manual handling. We can look at requirements. We can look at the video here. And again, this is available to your workforce at any point, at any time.
To assess all the risks,
etc. Okay, now what we're going to do as well is just highlight how we can enable the updating of people's training records in real time using the app. Now, to facilitate, I'm just going to quickly show you another heat map report here. Now, we have got, looking at the site, we have 7 people who are doing the role of fire safety worker. And I can see that right now, we don't have much data signed off. We've got 2 people here who have got 5% of their course signed off, which if I scroll down, you can see what that is. So we want to show you now how using the app, because obviously a lot of your workforce will be using the app, how we can start to improve those training records. So I'm going to hand you over to Justin, and let's take a focus on this person, Jess Anderson. I can see that at present she's got nothing signed off. And Justin, as part of that demo, if you can just sign off Jess on fire safety procedures, we can come back once you've finished showing the app and show you how that training record is updated in real time. So Justin, I will hand the screen over to you.
Very much. Just before we jump into that, I just want to say that we do have a Q&A session at the end. So if you just pop in any questions you have into the Q&A session on Zoom, and we'll try and address some of those at the end of the call. I'll just go ahead and share my screen. So now, hopefully you can see the app on my screen. So when you log into the app, you'll see that it's a bit more simplified than the web version. It's mostly for data collection and data entry, although we do have some reporting on there as well. The app is available on iPhone, iPad. It's available on Android devices, Android tablets, so the full suite of mobile devices. It's also available offline and online. And so what we mean by offline is you could go into an area where you've got a good connection. You could download the procedures, the PDFs, the videos, the compliance checks that you want to work on. The app can then be put into offline mode. You can do whatever you want, capture signatures, capture evidence. And then when you're ready to connect that back up and send it to the server, you can connect that back up and it will push that to the server for syncing to the website remotely. So I'll just give you a brief tour of the app. I'm just going to keep an eye on the time because I do want to have plenty of time for Q&A as well, but I'll keep an eye on that. So first off, if I just go into this activities panel, just jump in here, I can see this is really the sort of place where you'll find everything you have to do now. Now, we do have notifications in the app, so if you are given a task to do, it will pop up on the phone when you're using it. But I can see that I'm logged in as Justin Michael, who is myself, and I can see all the upcoming activities that I have to do. So obviously, because this is test data, there's quite a lot in here, but I can see basically what's overdue and what's coming up in the next 15 to 30 days. And I can also see an overview of my progress, so my compliance checks, my courses, and my procedures. I can see which ones are overdue, which ones are in progress, and which ones are completed, and any actions that have been raised against myself as well. So I can see I've completed one action, but there's one action on me that's overdue. So maybe my manager has asked me to do a particular task and I haven't got around to that yet. Just quickly, I'll just jump back in there. There is also assessor activities. I don't believe there's test data for this user, but you would have anything that you're assessing other people on. So if I was assessing maybe a lead engineer, for example, I would have people in here that I could check how their assessments are doing. I can also get an overview of my role. So I can see that I've got various roles in this organization. I've got an electrical worker, fire safety worker, construction worker, and I can jump into those and get a bit more information. So it's broken down, as Murray said, into curriculums. So I'll take the electrical curriculum. And I can see there's a few here. There's a course, which is the course icon. There's a compliance check there, and there's a procedure. And I've got 0% progress. So I'm basically a new employee at this stage. So we come out of there. Another really powerful feature is the libraries. So if we jump into here, you can see your company procedures, your company courses, your compliance templates, and also ones that are just based on your role. And really what this allows you to do is have a playbook in your pocket. So let's say you're usually a joiner, but occasionally you do electrical work. you maybe want to brush up on your electrical skills, you can go into the procedure library at any time and have a quick read of how you do a certain task. Maybe you might find sometimes that people would find that embarrassing to ask their line manager or whatever. So you've really got best practice in your pocket. And key here is that this is not YouTube or any sort of public information. This is your company's best practices right there in your pocket. So I can take an example of that quickly. And just so you're aware, this little green icon means that I've downloaded these procedures for offline reading or offline viewing. But I can see there's some media associated with this one, so I'll just load it up. And I can see there's a PDF. I mean, it's not great reading it on a mobile phone, but you get the idea. And that could be a video, that could be a document, it could be anything really. I'll just jump out of there. The real bones is when we get into compliance checks. Now, I'm not going to go through everything you've just been shown by Murray on the web version. It's extremely similar. So I'll just go and jump into electrical safety. Now, this is a compliance check that has been assigned to myself to fill out. So I'm going to jump in here, and I can see I've made a little bit of progress on this compliance check. So I may be asked to do this periodically, or maybe just while I'm doing my job, I could capture some of this to prove my compliance and my competency. But I'm just going to go into the first one here, which is general working. And I can see that, I've answered this requirement previously, although I want to answer this top one: ensure national standards for electrical safety are met. I'm just to provide the response. So again, I can do this straight from my phone. I don't have to go to a desktop every time. But I can tick any supporting answers that I have. So if I feel that there's something that can support my answers with, I could also provide evidence to those supporting answers. But for now, if I just say yes, I'm fully conformant, I can have a look at any media. So what does good practice look like? What does being conformant look like in this particular case? Obviously, this is just demo videos, but you could imagine a very tailored video from your own organization. And I could select evidence. So I could take a photograph now, I could film myself doing something, or I could upload a photo. So, I mean, we'll just show you that now. I can find a photo that I've just taken on my device, or I can take it right now, and I can upload that evidence. So my line manager, who in this case is Murray on the call, he can see that I believe I'm conformant. I'm going to support that all my safety measures have met, and I've added a bit of evidence to prove that. Now, I could at this point raise any actions. This would be more useful if the line manager was to say to me, look, I don't think you're conformant. That doesn't look right. Go and redo your training. He could create that as an action. But I really don't have time to show you that today, but maybe another demo in the future. So I'll push that up. While waiting for that to go, I'm going to now do the sign off that Murray asked me. Now, I could be the other side of the world. I could be in California, and Murray could be in the UK, and we could still do this. But I'm just going to do this. So we're going into the sign off, and what I'm going to do is sign off the user Jess Anderson that she has received this training. So I'm just going into course sign off and by employee because I know the employee name. So I'm just going to, it's definitely the right site and it's the right training date. So I'm just going to go and select an employee. So I'm going to look for Jess. There she is. And then I can add courses from her role, which will just narrow it down to the courses that she's available to sit on. So I'm going to go into fire safety worker, which is the role, and then fire safety curriculum, I believe. And there it is. So that I can see the fire safety procedure. Now, if she'd done any training previously, we'd have some completion marks here that would tell me that she's already completed those. I'm just going to quickly check that media. Now, I could review this on my phone. I think this one might have, there we go. So I can see that fire safety document. Now I could get Jess to review that on her own phone, or she could do that on my phone if I pass it over to her. And then I'm going to complete that. So now we've marked that Jess has received the training, but there's nothing to prove it in a court of law. So we'll just capture some quick signatures. I'm going to capture my own signature. And now Jess can either load up her own phone and she'll have that signature ready to go and she can sign that on her own, or I can sign it, pass the phone to her, not sign it for her, but I pass the phone to her and she can sign it. And so we can upload any evidence like certifications or anything like that. I'll just do a different signature. There we go, just so we can see it. And there we go. So that's now signed off. I'm just going to pass you back to Murray quickly, who can show you that in the system, and then hopefully we can take some quick Q&As if you have any questions. So I'll just stop sharing. There we go.
Okay, so can everyone see my screen? Okay, yeah. Yep. Okay. So if you recall, I was not happy that some of our team, I know Jess is going to be working on site tomorrow, and I know that she hasn't done the fire safety procedure. And I phoned up Justin, who was on site, and I said, Justin, we've got the HSE coming in tomorrow. I need you to make sure that Jess is fully signed off. I haven't refreshed my page since then. If I go back in, look at fire safety workers, I can see that Jess is now 5% complete for her fire safety worker role. And if I go down here, I can see that Jess has now completed her fire safety procedure. And just to help me sleep at night, I need to be able to see that signatures. So I'll just quickly click this, and immediately I can see here's the signed thing with Jess as well. And if there have been any certificates uploaded, it would be here too. So what this really highlights is that, you know, you're from the ground up, we're gathering that data, we're making sure it's very easy, consumable, accessible for everybody to demonstrate their compliance or competency, making sure that's managed, making it visible to senior management. And you know, there's parts of the system we haven't really highlighted on about how the system will automatically schedule renewals, inform the right people well in advance that someone needs to be retrained. So there really is no excuse to not be able to ensure that your workforce are fully compliant at any time. Now, this obviously was a very whirlwind demo. There's a whole plethora of reports, etc., that we've not even touched upon about non-conformance by role, by location, and we can do these in secondary sections. You know, please feel free to reach out directly if you would like a deeper dive. But for the most part, I think that kind of wraps up today's demo. What I would say, just going back to what Peter mentioned at the start, is that obviously you see these things, you get a lot of information thrown at you. It can be daunting. If you sign up by the 1st of August, we will provide you with 10 hours of your team, 10 hours over any period of time to fully onboard you, give you training and support. And that comes with no system charge at all until the 1st of October. And by having this, you know, taking this journey forward, that immediately gives you a pain-free way to show that you've got compliance against the Building Safety Act immediately.